Welcome back to the Burstimo Music Marketing Podcast. Today we are with Joe Kentish, who is Head of A&R at Warner Music, best known for signing Dua Lipa and progressing her career. I don't know if you know about why we invited you onto the podcast specifically. Because I know it was Maddie who reached out, but there was a comment which was top of one of our YouTube videos asking who we should invite on, and your name came up and everyone voted for it. So we got you on, and welcome to the podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself, give yourself a little bit of, give us a little bit of background about you?
Yep. So like you said, I'm Joe Kentish. I'm Head of A&R at Warner Records in the UK. I started my music career starting a UK garage label, must be like 20 years ago now, with a couple of friends of mine. Didn't previously have... I loved music, and music was kind of the soundtrack of all the best parts of my life. I was like an active clubber and sort of all around the UK and London music and club scene as a consumer, although that's not what I would have called it then. And wasn't really sure what to do with my life, and some friends were thinking about doing this label thing because of one of their brothers was a producer, and we did it. I think in hindsight, maybe because we didn't have anything else going on, and just to be closer into the culture that we were all enjoying and going to parties and just being closer to the DJ decks, I guess. Like first you want to get on the guest list, and then you kind of want to be in the VIP, and then you kind of want to be standing behind the DJ decks. It's like those, so I guess it was just to do that, to get closer to the DJ decks.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a few years and had lots of fun. In hindsight, it was all passion and not particularly much know-how. But I did start meeting lots of A&R people who were just like cool guys who used to come to the studio and have like decent cars and kind of like, I don't know, they just looked like, I was like, that looks good. Like, those people are cool, but wasn't really still thinking in a business sense. But eventually one of them offered me a job. That was two guys called Jamie and Miles who worked at Parlophone, which was a super successful label at that time. They wanted some help on some acts they were developing, to do remixes and just to give them a bit more of an idea of a younger perspective on some stuff that they were doing. So I worked there as a consultant for them. Then I got a job as a junior A&R at Innocent, which was a label under Virgin Music at the time. Worked there for a few years, then went to Universal and was an A&R at Universal. And I guess that's where I really kind of had the responsibility of signing stuff myself. And was at Universal for 8 years, and then moved to Warner Records, and have been at Warner Records for 6 years, and Head of A&R for about 2 or 3 years now.
You've literally been everywhere then, haven't you?
Not Sony. So if Sony are listening...
I mean, I don't actually think that a lot of people know what an A&R is. Mm-hmm. Is there like a really basic way of explaining what an A&R does and your day-to-day job, basically?
Sure. So A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire, which is a super old name for it, but it's when you used to look after the artist and find them the repertoire, i.e. the songs, which at the time would have been like sheet music. So the repertoire was the right, nice fancy name for a nice fancy job. And essentially we do the same thing. So, but I always break A&R down into 3 sections. So you've got, first is the scouting element of it, which most people associate with it, which is going out and locating talent, evaluating talent and locating it, and deciding on which artists you'd like to sign and trying to secure their recording rights for the record company or the body that you're working for. So that's section 1. Section 2 is then working with those artists and working with those artists on their music, so that what they present to the label to go and sell and promote is the best it possibly can be. Now, you might have signed an artist for a single, you might have signed an artist for an EP, for an album, for multiple albums, whatever it is, you are responsible for that final product that the label gets being as good as it can be. And some artists need very little help. that they kind of do everything themselves. Some artists need a little bit of help, maybe helping them with mixing, some final thoughts, and some artists need a lot more help in sort of refining their vision and making sure they're coming up with, making sure their songs are right and that you're keeping on a path. And that's not to say they're any less talented. They're super talented, but it can change. So that's part 2. I'm making this sound long. Usually when I do it, it's like really fast. Part 1, find the artist. Part 2, help them finish their music to the highest level possible. And then part 3, which is really difficult, but most people kind of overlook, it's kind of being the creative advocate for that artist within the label. So you spent the most time probably with the artist. You know why you signed them. You know why they signed to you. You know what they're about, the essence of what it is they're about. And the artist is not going to be in the label 5 days a week. So it's your job to be in there and just to kind of shout loudest about why your artist is great and everyone should be working harder on their project. And also just making sure that everything that's done within the label is done. Everyone's on the same page about the creative vision of what that artist needs to be, and driving it through the label. And that's a part of the job you can only learn when you have your own artist signed, and that is really, really hard. It's doing any sort of creative, subjective project within a large company is really tough. So that's the bit I think that the experienced A&Rs need to get really good at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
What are you actually looking for an artist to sign them in a label? Like in 2020, I'm sure it's changed a lot, or is it still just all about the music?
I'm sort of quite old school in that, and I don't know whether that means I'm a dinosaur or whether it means like I have real sort of great old school values, but I kind of just want something that excites me personally. When you sign an artist, through experience, I know how long it is, how long you need to be working with that artist, how much time you need to spend around them and around their music and around their team and their setup. And I find it really hard to get to that level of focus and engagement unless I'm personally moved by the music in some way. So I want to find people that are exciting and making exciting music and have the potential to be exciting to me. That remains the same. They've got to have music that I really like and moves me. There needs to be an element of the commercial. I've got to think, right, I kind of know that we can do a job with them. And that sounds cynical, but it's really important that I look at you and I think that all the resources that my company has at its disposal will dovetail with what you're doing and make it bigger. Because artists can release music themselves. So I need to look at you and think that what we do plus what you do can be bigger. We'll be adding value to your business. Otherwise, really, you should be doing it yourself, or you should be doing it with someone else. So that's really important now. And that equation comes into it more. Sometimes a lot of artists these days are saying, do I need a deal? I'm looking at a lot of artists myself and thinking, do you need a deal? You know, so there's that. I think maybe the biggest change now, though, is productivity. I think it's a lot harder to be the secretive genius up in your attic who doesn't promote themselves and is mysterious and is behind some sort of veil or curtain and is coming up with 12 pieces of music every 3 years to put out as an album, 12 records to put out as an album every 3 years. It's a romantic ideal and I love the idea of it. And you might get to that point in your career and it might work for some people. But in this marketplace, it's really difficult to be that. So I need to see an element of productivity. We tend to put out a lot more music of artists to break them now than we did 3 years ago, certainly 10 years ago. So they need to have that level of productivity and a way of engaging their audience. So not just productivity in terms of music, but productivity in terms of talking to their audience, having a language and a dialogue with their audience that they can maintain on their own, which takes energy.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, when you say productivity, do you mean just releases? But so when you say talking to an audience, is that live, social media, all of those things in one, basically?
Yeah, it can be it can be anything. And we speak to some artists who are quite reticent about really engaging in social media heavily. And I completely get that. I think if you're a young person not thinking really carefully about how much you engage in social media, whether you're a musician or not, you're probably making a mistake, or you're making unconscious decisions which are having a big effect on what and who you are. So we get that with artists. They're like, oh, I'm not sure about this and that, and that's absolutely fine. For me, talking and engaging with your audience doesn't mean you need to post 10 selfies a day. It's just finding a way to have this dialogue with them, and it might just be through pictures of the environment you're in, pictures of things you care about, reposting stuff that you care about, doing short clips of songs that you really like. It can be, I'm not giving you very many examples, but it can be anything. But I do think that when people find a record that they like and someone's saying something that they like, they want and expect to dive in a little bit deeper to that artist and kind of get to know their world a little bit. And it's for the artist to work out how they do that. And it's not to say we won't engage with people who don't have that all straight away set up, because most people don't. But it's something we need to get into.
Just have to sort of see the potential is there, basically.
100%. Yeah. And no artist comes with the full top trump deck, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. No artist comes at you with that. They all have things that they're great at and things that they're going to improve at.
It's interesting. It's funny you said something that we hear everyone in the industry say, and we say this as well. Artists ask, what specifically can I post on social media? And you've mentioned that it's what you're about. It's kind of your narrative. And then we get comments on our YouTube channel saying, yeah, but what specifically can I post? And it's like, I don't know, because you've got to figure out who you are, what you're about, what your brand is, and then go from there.
100%. And narrative is a word that I use a lot just in terms of music. You know, like what are you about? Like what story are you telling? And I pose it not because I want the answer right now. I've signed artists and sat around tables with lots of, like, you know, with lots of record industry people, and we're like, what is this? You know, what is this artist about? What's the brand? And like that. And we're right to be asking the question, but we're wrong to be expecting an answer at that point. It's good to always be thinking about that, I think. And what happens is, inevitably, when these artists start to, like, gain success, and it's, you know, a year, 2, 3, 4 years later, I look back and when everyone's writing about, at that point, people know what the narrative is. And I'm like, yeah, none of us thought that was the narrative at the start, which is the right way, right? These are young people kind of
finding their narrative,
finding themselves, and it's often, I find that when an artist has even finished an album and we'll listen back to the album together, I'll be like, oh right, so you're like really, really effed up over this situation in your life. And they're like, yeah, I was listening, I thought that was I was chill about that, and actually I'm not chill about that at all, clearly, you know. And but it's just a question you've always got to be asking. And it's the thing with social media, I guess you kind of got to go out there, do it, make some mistakes, get into it. And it is difficult. And this will come up again, I guess, during this conversation. It always comes up to me, like, you have to do so much of the questions have to be directed towards you. You know, like, what's your narrative like? Well, specifically, I'm not trying to be a recording artist.
Do you find that things have changed now that when you're signing artists, artists can be further down the line in terms of their size of their fan base compared to what it was 10 years ago, like in terms of followers, in terms of like streams and listeners?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me, you can engage an audience more because you've got the means to talk to lots of people. It's also really tough because everyone else has got the means to talk to lots of people. So the possibilities are there, but the possibilities are just as hard. But I kind of think we were always looking for artists with audience. Like we were always, I would prefer to walk into a gig with 200 kids inside, 100 kids waiting to get in outside, and them know all the words. That's maybe what would have happened 10, 15 years ago. That's what you would have seen if you were going to try and sign the Arctic Monkeys when things were getting really crazy. You'd have walked into a gig, 100 kids outside, all knew all of the words. They'd have the badges or the T-shirts, whatever. And that's the equivalent of whatever, 50,000 Instagram followers, or that's the same thing. We were always looking for audience. It was harder for people to build an audience, and it was harder for us to see the audience. But yeah, artists can get, I guess, further down the line for sure. And but audience doesn't equal that you should be signed to a record deal.
So what does fit for you?
It's no one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like we have to look at what you're doing and think we can amplify what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You might be doing something and have like a really great small engaged fan base. And I personally, because it is all my personal opinion, might think, I don't know how much bigger we can make that. I think that audience, I don't necessarily see the areas we're going to put your music, which is going to grow your fan base exponentially. So I have to make a kind of decision on that.
Yeah.
Or I might go to your gig and think, you know what, with a little bit of focus on the A&R, we've given you a bit of access to some more people or to some more equipment or whatever it is. I think we can elevate your music, which is going to mean it can be a bit broader. I think we can help you make bigger videos. I think there's things that I see, we can take your music to radio in a much more sort of forceful way. And I think radio will pick up on it. And so let's go with that, So that's, I guess, what we're looking for.
How are artists discovered now by yourself and other A&Rs? Because now social media is a thing. Is that a way you discover artists, or is it purely like word of mouth? You just go to random gigs? Like, how does it work for you specifically?
Yeah, we find artists the same way everyone else finds artists. Our friends tell us about, I guess we have a professional network on top of our friends' network as well. So you might have a friend of yours who kind of knows that you're in the music biz and be like, have you checked this out? I was listening to it all holiday. What is this song? Blah, blah, blah. And you get into it that way. So we've got a bigger network of professional sort of contacts that will do that with us for professional reasons. But yeah, we're on Instagram, like an artist that we really like might be like, hey, check this out. I'm really into this. You might be looking at Phoebe Bridgers, and Phoebe Bridgers is like, hey, I love this song by blah, blah, blah. And you go and have a little sort of dig into that. Instagram, Twitter, everywhere everyone else does.
We've been told in the past that A&Rs will find you. So everyone's saying, I wonder if you agree with this, because people say that an A&R will find you if they want to sign you. And people often come to us and say, can I submit? How do I submit to A&Rs? How do I get a meeting with A&R? And our response usually is, when you're ready to be signed, the right A&R will find you and offer you the deal. Do you find that to be the case, and do you agree with that? Or is there still a case where submitting your music and getting it into the right A&R helps?
I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and I know of one example where someone put an what do you call it? Unsolicited demo. I know of one example where it happened, and that was more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
do the math.
That says a lot. So let's talk about Dua Lipa then. How did that all start? How did she end up getting signed? Where did it start for her?
She, like a lot of great vocalists, kind of found out she had a voice, I guess, when she was super young. There's lots of videos of her kind of singing to her family and stuff. So I think the work began super early. Went to I think she went to music school at weekend, then went to a sort of performing arts thing at certain points during her childhood. So she'd always sung and kind of had a passion to do that, and was desperately trying to sort of meet producers and people to work with to get some material together, and eventually met, one person introduces you to another person, and eventually met her manager, a guy called Ben Mawson, who's a really super successful and established manager, who immediately kind of got what she was about, and Ben began to develop her, so sort of raised the level of who she was working with, and I had just taken on my job at Warner's and went to meet Ben. I heard he had this he was developing this new artist, but I kind of in truth went to see him generally to find out everything that he was doing, and I mentioned this artist and he said, "Oh yeah, she's great, but you won't meet her because we're developing her and we're not going to play her to any labels." So I kind of, okay, fine. And then he took a call and said, "Oh, you're in luck. She needs to sign a piece of paper. She'll be in the office any minute now, and you'll get to say hi." And yes, a few minutes later, she kind of came in, massive. She was wearing a massive orange feather coat or something. She was wearing something nuts anyway, and sort of just sat down, and any thought I might have that this would be like a normal, "Hi, so I hear you want to be an artist." She was like rapping. There was a mixtape out. I can't remember whose it was, but she started rapping. "Have you heard this?" And then started like rapping the whole thing to me, and then just was kind of this bundle of energy. And it would be wrong to say I immediately went, "Man, I'm going to make you a star." I just thought, this is exciting. My skill set is helping exactly this type of artist meet the right producers and writers, and developing exactly who this person is. That's the area I've been in. So I thought, you plus what I do and what my label does, we could do something here. This is a really ideal fit with what we do. What we do as major labels and as Warners, and what we're looking for, what I personally do, and what you want to be, and what you need, and what you have. So it really was perfect in that sense. And we basically, as a label, offered on the spot, and which doesn't happen very often. But it was such the right fit, because Warner's had no sort of mainstream pop artist, and I'd been given the job because they wanted to build that side of their brand, and it had amazing history of it, but didn't have any of it now. And the owner of Warner's would say, "We need another Madonna. We need a huge female artist." And so it was like, whoa, the stars really aligned. So yeah, that was it. And we offered straight away. It got a little bit hairy. A couple of other labels heard about her and tried to offer, but she loved the idea of coming to a label where she could be the next big female artist, and we didn't have anything in her lane, and she'd have my undivided attention and the label's undivided attention. And she was the first female solo artist to have a #1 record in America after Madonna. So it actually, nice bow on the end of the story, at the end of the story, but it worked out, and I wish it worked out like that all the time, but it kind of worked out. It worked out in that way.
So what was the development from there then, from like your end and from the label? Was there a lot of work to be done, or was it sort of just...
There was a lot of work to be done.
Adding a lot of value to her, basically.
There was 100%. Her ambition and her manager's ambition was sky high. So they turned down a lot of stuff. People wanted her to feature on records. People wanted her to... I think everyone had a real... In terms of the creative team, we had a real ambition for what she did. So it was trying to find records that we felt were different and special enough, and trying to make different, huge, interesting pop records is, I think, the most difficult thing to do in A&R. So it was about developing her writing. She had all the character, but and all the ideas, but she didn't have. She hadn't done like 10,000 hours studio sessions, to get so the writing developed over that time, and there was at least a year, maybe not that long, but there was a long period for which we weren't getting it. But I think what everyone stuck to, her most of all, was that we're not going to go until this is good and different and right, and we find her sound and we kind of find her narrative and all of these things. And once it started to come together, it came together really quickly. She went to Canada, and we were working with some of the people from the OVO, which is Drake's camp, and we sort of, at the end of a conversation, I think that the manager had, someone said, "Oh, you should work with this new guy that we've signed, this young guy producer." And she went and did a session with him, like typical, like after the main session. She went and did a session with him in the evening. I don't even think she really enjoyed the session that much at the time, but then this song came out of it, and she was like, "This song's something." That guy, whose name's Cos, is now like her main collaborator. He produced this single that she's got out at the moment, like mega talented producer. So you kind of stumble by doing the work. You have the accident, right? And then that song that they did that night ended up sort of providing a bit of a blueprint for what she wanted to do. And it was like, this isn't the big single, but this is the vibe. Mm. And then I think it was downhill from there, making the rest of the record. We're like, we got it. Mm. And interestingly, on this current album, the current single is the song that did exactly the same. It was the song that was like, all right, okay, this is what we're doing. And then we made the rest of the record really quickly. So, yeah.
So how does a pop artist break then? Because for me, I know like a grime artist or a rock artist, they start with like these small little gigs and shows and then kind of build it up. For pop artists, is it the same or is it a different route? Because for me, I only ever hear about a pop artist when it's like they're already big and they're getting a lot of coverage. Is it just the same route?
No. I think that with like a grime artist or a rap artist, I think the audience there, for me, that audience is like just so incredibly dynamic in wanting new music. Mm-hmm. They just want the newest stuff now, and they demand that of their artists, and their artists are really good at giving it to them. And so I think you can kind of make waves quite quickly. I think with pop, a big part of pop is epic scale and escapism and fantasy and that. So people kind of want big, and so pop has a bit more of smoke and mirrors. You're convincing everyone that this is the next big thing. This is huge. Mm. It's not really that big, but then it becomes big because everyone kind of jumps in on it. That's a really crude way of describing the difference of it.
So they basically, pop specifically, have to be everywhere.
Yeah, listen, the market's fragmenting and there are different genres of pop where I think people actually want it to be a bit more lo-fi and stuff. But I definitely think there is something in the immediacy of sort of grime and rap genres that lends itself to breaking new stars quite quickly. Yeah. And I think that's borne out in how many new exciting artists there are in those genres. And I think the pop world tends to be a little bit slower.
How much control do you have over the artists, like say for Dua Lipa, in terms of branding, in terms of sound? So you put the producers together and tried to make them something, and you said that like what they came up with was it. But would you ever say, no, that's not it, and then the artist wants it to be it? How much conflict is there?
It's what I think when I speak to potentially young artists, we talk about signing and ask them what their fears are about signing to a record label. It's always this idea they have that the old dude's going to get in the room with them and be like, yeah, that's your music. Now we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not the way I work. It's not the way any good A&R works, and most A&Rs work full stop. If it ever was a thing, I'm sure that had a bit more truth in the past. If there are still many remnants of it, they're not lasting that long and they're on their way out. I wouldn't say I've got control over any of my artists. I don't want to sign artists who would be up for giving away control, to be honest. I will always say with energy what I think. But I find my relationship with them is always more just encouraging them, to giving them the security to like, be braver, let's try this, let's try harder, let's make it better. It's more kind of adding fuel to their flame rather than trying to direct them in any way. I just don't really remember that many times when I've like had an artist where like they're like, this is my single, and I'm like, this is your single. I can't remember a time when that's happened. There might be some of my old artists thinking, you definitely did that to me. But I don't really remember it like that. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Because you're passionate about the stuff that you're working on with them and that they're doing. And when a great record comes up, if you're half decent A&R and they're half decent artists, they're half decent manager, it's not that difficult. You know, because you play it to a couple of people I might have, you know, I open my office door and blast a new tune and I'll have a couple of people like, oh, what's that? Or I'll open the door, blast a new tune and everyone carries on with their day. You know, like, and the artist is doing the same, you know, so they'll be like, oh, I played this to my hairdresser and it went off. And the manager might be, I played this to my wife or I played this to my husband. And they're like, bangers are bangers. Like, it's you kind of get into it. And certainly the environments and the way my sort of mentors and stuff in A&R, they've always been just about having taste and great records. It's usually on the same page.
Yeah. There were, this has probably happened over the last couple of months. There's been a lot of talk about labels signing talent that have an audience, say from like TikTok and things.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because it's pretty clear that you like love the music, you go for the music first.
Yeah.
And these people sometimes haven't even released music yet.
Yeah, it's a worry, man. It's a worry because like a lot of people my age and I'm sure a lot younger, I go on TikTok and I'm like, it's definitely the end of the world. Whatever, like there are good people on TikTok and there are bad people on TikTok. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just another discovery tool. And what is, but it is a format that people are like enjoying having music to. So it goes with there. They've got these short videos and they have music with them. So it's a format that people like. I'll always still, doesn't matter what the format is, I'll always still come to it from you're an exciting person making exciting music who puts yourself out there in an exciting way. Let's talk. But it's another way for people to gain audience. So it's becoming a thing. But it's just another discovery tool for people out there and for us.
Yeah.
But I'm not spending all my time on TikTok.
What are the key indicators of when you know that an artist is going to be successful? Or to rephrase it, what do you think drives an artist's success? Are you sat in the office saying, if only this track was on more Spotify playlists, if only there was more Instagram followers? What tells you that something is going to pop, or a key driver?
There are really boring things, like sort of rapid growth in organic consumption on Spotify. So like it's not just in people's playlists, but they are seeking it out and saving it and listening to it again and again. I mean, we live in a world where there are so many platforms where people can be listening to music, that it will be a combination of lots of things. It's still the old school thing, like, oh, my mum heard it. You're like, shit, your mum heard it. We're out there, right? Unless your mum's an absolute legend, like listening to community pirate radio stations. But yeah, there's still the thing. Oh, it's in my Uber or it was on, Radio 1. There's still like just lots of different things. But yeah, it'll be playlisting and stuff like that. Shazam is a really good sort of indicator, although Shazam leans towards it being played on certain platforms. I guess that in a world where there are so many different places to listen to music, it takes a few of them. But ultimately, chart and radio charts are there, and consumption over time is kind of what you want, because you can have a record that does that, which is a really sharp sort of consumption profile, or you can have a record that builds and is steady over time. Realise that making that with my finger isn't great for a podcast, but you know what I mean.
Most people watch on YouTube.
Yeah, right. Okay. I just made a mountain with my finger. So some things are like that, and then some things are more gradual. So I guess you look over time, but I kind of want, I want to appear very high on streaming charts. I want to appear very high on OCC charts. I want to be very high on radio, on radio charts. I want that to be replicated all around the world. I want to hear it when I go out. I want people who I know are not really early adopters of music. Your dad, your uncle, I want those people hearing about it, because it means I've got into a broader space. All of those things.
And do you think that's possible without a label?
It's 100% possible. It's harder. Those two things are factual. And, people see this label, non-label thing as very binary. My view on it is really pragmatic. Like, if you don't want to be on a label, I don't want to work with you, because it takes a lot out of me to work with an artist. I can only work well with a certain number of artists at any time. I want to have really big success in whatever shape that is, with as many artists as I possibly can in the rest of my career. It's really hard. If you're not in it 100% with me, no harm, no foul, all good. I need to work with someone else who is. So it's possible. It's just harder. And I think looking at it in a binary way is a bit unhelpful for people. Like, label equals X, not label equals Y. Labels are a bunch of services that you will probably need as an artist, some more than others. Radio promotion, TV promotion, a creative department who make videos and do all your artworks, a A&R coordination department who just book studios and kind of get stuff done, an A&R department giving opinions and help and advice and encouragement for your music to be as good as it can be. A sales department, we go around and get your records on all the platforms and talk to them about trying to get as high as possible in playlists or, shop windows or wherever it might be. We have a royalties department who make sure you're getting paid when stuff gets out there. We have a legal department. We have a branding department. We have a sync department. So we're all of these things in one place.
Yeah, selling it to me now.
Right. Now, most probably as an artist, you will need most of those services. If you want to go big time, you're going to need most of those services. You can get them under one roof, which has its advantages and has its disadvantages, or you can go out and get them all yourself, or you can do them all yourself with your manager, but you're still doing them. That's time you're not making music. That's time your manager isn't trying to book shows or do deals. Like, when your manager's doing this, when your manager's sorting out your live stuff, he's not getting you a brand deal. When he's getting you a brand deal, he's not listening to your music and helping you with the A&R or booking a studio. Like, so there's an opportunity cost of everything, right? So you just need to start thinking about that equation for you. Now, of course, then there's a financial thing about masters and where they go to and stuff like that. And it's a big thing. And you should 100% go talk to your lawyer and accountant about that. Like, that's my view on it. I don't kind of like that bit of it. Knock yourself out. And obviously, the more demand there is and the bigger audience you've already built, the more you've proven yourself in the marketplace and all of that. the more leverage you have, and labels are a lot more transparent than they were, just because streaming and stuff has made consumption more transparent. That bit of it is your thing, but if you want investment in this, there's no investor in a business that is not going to want to share with you in the potential profits of your business. It's not happening in anything. So yeah, you should go. It's like Dragon's Den. You go and cut the best deal you can cut, all good. So yeah, you can do it without a label, but it's harder for all of those reasons that I told you. It's harder because you got to go out and do all of that stuff. And all these independent artists have all of those services being done for them. And how they slice and dice it is something that they've had to work out. But you have all those services.
And just to wrap things up, is there any mistakes you see artists making just all of the time where you kind of just see it so common, you wish that they'd kind of stop doing it, or I could only sign you if artists just stop doing this?
I don't know that there's one thing. I kind of, I have I work with artists most of the time, and have, it's my favorite bit of the job, and have all my fun with the artists and stuff. And so I know how difficult it is. It's not the easiest road to go down. Even if you're successful, it has the most amazing highs. So but it's not easy, being a big star is really hard. So I empathize with them a lot. So I kind of, so don't want to give anyone a hard time. I think it's really tough. And being and trying to break is really tough, and believing in your vision is really tough. I would say sometimes with some potential artists, I would say the A&R people we are not like the destination at all, nor do we want to be the destination. Like good A&Rs don't want to be destination. Therefore, like the focus of your attention should be getting in front of an A&R. Because most A&R meetings that you do with an artist, you hear what they have and you're like, all right, cool, come back and see us later. It's cool, it's developing, it's early, it's fine. It's not going to be the kind of this nirvana moment, We're watching what you're doing in the music you're making, and then making decisions from there. So I would say, like, focus as much as you can on having amazing music, having amazing content, and getting it out there and talking to people who will get it out there, because your aim is not to get a record deal. Your aim is to be a successful artist with an audience. The record deal is not the answer. The successful artist with an audience is the answer. And maybe we'll be a part of that for you, and maybe we won't. But that's where you want to get to. So just keep in mind the goal rather than the label, because we're not magicians. Like we don't get it right all the time, but we offer a sort of improved chance. But so does a good manager. So does a great MD. So does a brilliant video director. They all improve your chances of getting out there. And major, we sign a really, really small number of acts every year, and it's not saying that the music that you make isn't great. It's just saying that we personally, subjectively, don't feel like it's the right thing for us to do right now. And that shouldn't get people down or stuff, or stop them. It should, it should just more focus them on getting their music out there and building an audience.
It's a strong place to leave it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
No worries at all.
I really appreciate that.
No worries at all.
I think that's just so much insight. You're the first A&R we've ever had on, so I think...
Oh, right, okay.
I think emerging artists are going to take a lot from that. So thank you very much for coming on.
No worries at all. It was fun.
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this one. Drop it a like, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe already, and we'll see you in the next one.